was born and raised in a little town of Woonsocket in eastern South Dakota. I went to what is now Dakota State University, known as General Beadle State Teachers College at the time.
What year was this now, Russ?
This was back in, I graduated high school in 1948.
Okay.
So I was going to college in 49 to 52. I graduated college in 1952. I knew I was about to be drafted, and I was. And so on my birthday in September of 1952, I went to the service, did my basic training in what is now Fort Chaffee, Arkansas. One thing I remember about that is that we bivouacked in December in Arkansas, which you might have thought would have been reasonably warm.
Reasonably warm, yes.
Reasonably. They gave us summer weight sleeping bags. That's all we had. And the temperature got down to 10 above zero. And it was a pretty
miserable.
tough situation for a while, for a full week. Upon completion of the basic training, at that point, I took my training for what was called Fire Direction Center Artillery.
What did that entail?
Well, which meant that you should be able to
locate the enemy.
Locate the enemy and arrive at the right azimuth and all of that stuff. Immediately upon finishing that, we were informed that we would be sent to what was known as FECOM, Far East Command, which meant Korea.
Yes.
And we left Seattle, Washington for Yokohama, Japan, and 1,100 miles north of Pearl Harbor. Our ship with several thousand troops on it lost its propeller. In fact, I have about as exciting a story on the way over as I have after
Well, tell us about that. Tell us about that.
Well, anyway, 1,100 miles north of Pearl Harbor, we lost our propeller. So there we are, sitting there in the water, up and down, up and down.
So this ship only had one propeller.
Well, apparently.
And you lost it.
And
somehow.
we lost that propeller, and everybody, I think, on the ship was already half seasick or worse. So anyway, we waited 3 days for 3 tugboats to come out of Pearl Harbor to try to hook us up and tow us back.
Yeah.
And I think it took probably at least 3 days for them to get us hooked up, because we ended up breaking the chains about every time. So after 3 days, we were finally hooked up and ready to go, and we were 1,100 miles north of Pearl Harbor, up around Midway Island. And it took 11 days, that's 100 miles every 24 hours that they were towing us, 11 days to get from that spot back to Pearl Harbor. So everybody thought, well, my goodness, we're going to
Pearl, you're going to Hawaii.
We're going to Hawaii.
Hey, this is going to be great.
We'd surely have a few days there.
Sure.
And so after we got there, we found out that they had sent out another troop ship from San Francisco to meet us there. And as it turned out, we ended up having one night at Honolulu. I think just about everybody went out to Waikiki Beach and spent that night.
Yeah, including you.
Yes. And that was the extent of our vacation in Hawaii.
That was your R&R.
Right.
Rest and relax. One day R&R,
yeah,
crossing the Pacific.
That's about right, yeah. So we all boarded another ship, and by the time we got to Yokohama, Japan, we had spent 35 days on the water. And when I got on the ship, I weighed about 180 pounds. When I got off, I was about 152 or 3. So I lost a little weight.
Did you get seasick?
Yes. And along with most everyone
else.
It was unbelievable. So now we get to Yokohama, Japan, and that's where they get you ready to head off to Korea. And as it turned out, I was assigned the 65th Infantry Division. The MOS that you had doesn't mean anything when you get into a combat zone. So I ended up being assigned to the 65th Infantry Regiment, I should say.
Did that surprise you?
Well,
you're expecting to be aiming the gun at the enemy, and
yeah, that's right.
But when you got there, you were assigned to do something else.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And when we got there, finally, they lined everybody up. This is something you've heard about in the movies probably, but they lined everybody up, and lo and behold, some warrant officer came out and he says, "Can anybody type?" And I raised my hand.
Sure,
I
sure.
can type. And as it turned out, I didn't end up going to the 65th Infantry Regiment. I was asked to stop off right there and join the headquarters battery for the personnel section. That's where I spent my 13 months in Korea, and we were stationed, generally speaking, 4 to 5 miles behind the lines most of the time. We never really saw a lot of combat, but every night we could look up on the hill, the front lines, and it was just lit up like the 4th of July every night. When I got assigned to the personnel section, I was going to go to the 65th Infantry Regiment. I think it was about 3 weeks later, we got word that the 65th Infantry Regiment was completely wiped out. And so I had to thank my lucky stars that, in my case at least, I didn't get in on that. And I was over there when they signed the armistice in July of 1953.
Okay.
We went up on the hill after the next morning. After that ceasefire, went up on the hill to take a look what was going on. And for as far as the eye could see, 105s, 155s, tanks, any kind of armament that you could think of was lined up almost wheel to wheel, still pointed north, but everything was silent. And that was kind of a memorable thing to see that.
So when the armistice was signed, that ended the fighting. Is that correct? That was it, and you were there for that.
Yeah.
When you came home, what you learned while you were in the service, did you bring anything back home that helped you in your life after the service?
Well,
were you a better person?
I suppose one would have to say that he matured considerably. It was an experience that one wouldn't necessarily care to duplicate, but it was a worthwhile experience, serving 2 years in the Army. When I came back, I had a job waiting for me in Ipswich, South Dakota, Ipswich High School. Came back and I was a week late getting there, getting discharged. That's where I started my education career.
And you were a teacher?
Teacher.
High school?
Yeah, yeah.
History?
No, it was business education, accounting and that kind of stuff.
Thank you for your service.
Well,
I really mean that.
Thank you.